one of the tactics they use is they send in informants that are like on board with this political agenda, and they quote unquote infiltrate the group. And by infiltrate, that means they attend the public barbecue.
Yeah,
and they'll do things where they'll wear a wire and they'll try to instigate something. They'll say, "Let's commit a crime," and then if Scheaffer tries to explain to them why they should not commit a crime, then they'll edit the tape to make it sound like Schaeffer's saying the exact. Then they'll act like Scheaffer has no right to introduce the other portions of the tape when it comes to court. So it's just unbelievable the kind of abuses that have been allowed through these motions in limine, and they have everything twisted up to where you have a right to everything and its opposite. So they could just basically it becomes arbitrary and capricious whenever you exercise any rules of evidence. And this is just an inexcusable situation that the Ninth Circuit is let the country get into over there in its area. And really, it needs to be. I hope that Trump and Congress do something to break up that Ninth Circuit, because I don't think Alaska belongs in it. Honestly,
no, nobody belongs in it. It's a communist court. That's what they do. They get people like Scheaffer in there and lock them up.
The Ninth Circuit. I call it the Ninth Circuit of Hell. It's so corrupt.
The Ninth Circus court.
Yeah. Hopefully our president, I know he mentioned during, while he was running, breaking up, some of these corrupt judges that are working, in this capacity, corrupt. I know that he mentioned it. I posted an article, I think it was published back in 2015, about the corrupt judges, because he's got to be aware he's dealing with the same antics,
Oh yeah, and the prosecutors in the last case that I was just at, they didn't have to really do much of anything, and the judge was obviously on their side, and against Scheaffer. Even was mentioning about Scheaffer that Scheaffer should work on his personality and his actions, like he was a nut or something. The guy's brilliant. He's been my friend for 10 years. I've helped him since the day he got arrested. I picked up the phone to Don Young, Congressman Don Young. I've got nothing out of Don Young, Murkowski, Sullivan, Senator Baggage. They all know he's not guilty. They lie to us. Local people won't touch it.
Why are they relocating him so much?
Well, he was in Marion, Illinois for years. In the last 9 years, he was moved from Marion to Terre Haute, and that's where he's been for 8.5 years. And he just recently, maybe a month ago, he got shipped to Tacoma, SeaTac out there, because he was going to court out there in Tacoma. Now, why isn't it in Fairbanks? There's a court here in Fairbanks. They got to keep shipping the court around.
Why do you think that is?
Well, so they can get a jury that doesn't know him, and they can get down there. They can make up lies about him, and the people in Fairbanks are almost 400 miles away, and don't even know what's going on much, because the news media is not going to put it out there, So they just take it around and end up getting a conviction. And Schaeffer's he's lucky to be alive. When they went into his house, he had the SWAT team in his house and wanted to take his kid from him. And there's one witness that was a security policeman at Fort Wainwright, the Army base right here. Scheaffer went there. He came to my house, and he said he was really scared. He came to my house pale. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "You think his militia has taken a mind of its own, because they're trying to force him into committing, like doing a shootout or something. Like he's a militia guy. He wants to do a shootout or something like that." And Scheaffer says he is a Gandhi, not a Rambo, And he's never done anything violent, but they've got violence. He's a domestic terrorist, though, and so you can use that to keep him locked up and keep him in these 24-hour surveillance prisons where your wall is a mirror and they're looking at you.
Who was it that pulled a knife on him?
Oh, that was J.R. Olson, I guess. One night, him, Schaeffer, and Michael Anderson and Schaeffer were at the Pike Landing, which is a restaurant place out there, and I guess they had a little confrontation out there. And Schaeffer didn't have a plan, and Olson and the government wanted him to have this plan on killing people and doing all this stuff, So they pulled a knife on him and wanted a plan.
So the informant actually pulled a knife on Scheaffer, right?
Yeah, the informant did. They pulled a knife on him. He's going to bleed him out right here at my feet and all this stuff,
And where was Schaeffer's son when that was happening?
Oh, Schaeffer's son wasn't there at that time, but when they came into Schaeffer's house, they wanted to take his son, but Scheaffer was holding his son, and so no shots were fired or anything like that there. Schaeffer said he's avoided getting killed a couple of times. The radio station, they were going to kill him out there at the radio station out of town.
I think there was an incident, if I remember correctly, where his son was actually in the presence of an informant when the informant was doing something unprovoked, aggressive to Scheaffer. So, and also the way that the informant treated, one of the informants treated his family constitutes kidnapping. Because
they kidnapped him, yeah.
They stole the battery out of a car, didn't they? And that was in the winter, right?
Yeah, Scheaffer was wanting to leave town, so he packed up his family and was taken off. And they got him pulled over and stopped, pulled the battery out of the car, and drove him to a house and kept him. His wife was pregnant at the time, kept him locked up in the attic of a house for 23 days, wasn't it?
So this was the informant doing this, right?
Yeah, the informant. They told the informant, you're going to have to do prison time, and he had a bunch of prison time coming for doing various things in Alaska. And so he was desperate to get Scheaffer convicted. A couple of them were.
And how much did they get paid for this?
I heard it was $300,000. Plus they're on the protected witness list, believe it or not. These guys that the government paid to set this innocent man up are now on the protected list where who knows where they're at and what their names are now,
Blood money.
So if there's any justice, they'd be indicted for kidnapping because of the stealing the battery from that car and keeping his family in the attic like that under these false pretenses.
Oh, hey, it goes on and on. Like you say, the guy that came in there and so-called infiltrated. If Scheaffer invited him to come to a barbecue, Schaeffer's having a barbecue in his yard, so the guy walked around the side of the house, and that was the infiltrated. That's what they call infiltrating the militia, the big militia. Mm-hmm. He wants to protect his family and his neighborhood. Is what the militia is.
Publicly online, so I'm very familiar with their tactics online. I know that there's a network of these, state actors and groups that operate online to target the activists and to, troll and try to discredit, make it out like we're crazy, right? And I'm not unfamiliar with it. I just, I keep to myself pretty much because of it. But, this issue with the child trafficking and this immunity child trafficking, they target these gang stalkers and state actors target and especially foster care children or children that are aging out of the system that are having children. And, it's the same thing on the black market. You can sell a gun one time, you can sell drugs one time, but a human can be sold over and over again. So it's very.
You hear what's going on in Montana?
It's
you
very
should talk
lucrative.
To a gal.
But not only that, really quick. I want to make the point. There's federal incentives, Title ID incentives that every time they transfer these prisoners or relocate them or relocate foster children, there are federal incentives every time they are removed and rehomed or sent to another prison. So I just wanted to say that briefly, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a gal named Destiny Field in Great Falls, Montana. What they're doing to her, I mean, it's amazing. And then I called up the sheriff's office. I said, the sheriff's supposed to uphold the Constitution, and this gal down the street from you there is just getting raked over the coals. And I said, have you heard about out in Montana? I asked the deputy, there was a farm that they found 27 foster care kids. I guess there's about 27 children in this ranch thing out in the sticks. And of course, they're getting all this money to take care of all these 27 kids, and they were living in some pretty sad conditions out there. And I said, have you heard it? They did, and the deputy denied that he ever even heard of that. And it happened right up the road from him, I mean, people just don't want to respond, I guess. And all these little kids were in there.
Well, they've privatized the system, so they'll contract out these, to these group homes where, oftentimes there is child trafficking going on, and
sure, make a deal, huh?
Yeah.
Let's make a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what Scheaffer Cox came about in Alaska. What was going on?
Yeah, that's part of it.
Well, let me give you a quote from Scheaffer that he wrote to me. He wrote to me of this in January 2018, and the subject is pedophilia explained. And I'm going to quote from that. He says, "Quote: I thought that child molesters were just a gaggle of marginalized sickos. What I found out the hard way is that they are practically the central institution of the deep state, because the positions of vocational abuse have self-selected for power lusters who fit the child molester type." So this is the realization. So I can't prove it, but in my opinion, it was the pedo ring, the light being shined on the pedo rings in Alaska was probably the final straw. That's probably why they had to felt they had to frame him up. And so he got suckered punched with a murder conspiracy charge. It was like the fourth indictment or the fifth indictment they did against him, and he only had like a month to prepare for it. And this is the thing that he got 310 months for, which later got reduced to 188 months. And it's all based on lies and phony cut-up tapes. They're not allowed to be explained, not allowed to present the context. There were even recordings that were deleted, weren't there, Brian? They had exculpatory evidence on them. That would be what? Felony destruction of evidence?
Yeah, but you know what? There's some of those things they thought they got rid of, but we have them now, and we brought them up at the last court, and they still come up with he's delusional because he's homeschooled. The exculpatory evidence that we had at that time didn't matter, and he's nuts because he wanted to build a submarine, and they knocked off some of his sentence, and then now if he does live through this, I fear for his life because of like Robert David Neal and others that have been murdered when they had good cases going against the government. They kill them.
What's the situation right now with the communication?
There's so many activists in that boat, though. Some really high-profile cases going on right now.
Oh yeah, a lot of these people that are involved in locking people up like this are the ones that are in the spotlight now. But it's still going on. It's not stopped. It's still going on out here. Then Jeffrey Winehouse. Jeffrey Winehouse is a guy. He's in Missouri. He's been in 7 years or something, and he had an open concealed carry of a gun, had it in his holster, and a cop saw him and told him to put the gun down, and he didn't even have it. He just had it in his holster, and cop jumped out and shot him down when he said, "Hey, I got a right to have a gun just like you do." Bam, bam, 6 times they shot him, hit him 4 times, twice in the head. He barely survived, and he got locked in prison to cover up that little mistake.
It's scary.
I could go on and on like that. On and on like that.